Thank you very much for joining this panel discussion. My name is Jazz. I am the CEO and co-founder of Magic Stamp. Those of you that don't know us, we are a digital loyalty platform supporting the high street. And in these times where the high street has been hit probably most, particularly during lockdown, we want to talk with some industry thought leaders about what has it been like during lockdown, and more importantly, what is it going to look like after lockdown? When we decided to put this together about a week ago, we had no idea we'd have such an illustrious, awesome panel. So I'm super pleased for everyone joining us, so thank you for that. Onto that, I'm going to introduce. So we've got founders here from, I've got Richard from Get a Drip, a health and wellness business. I've got Adam from Perky Blenders, super cool coffee roaster and retailer. We have Hubert from Noosa Kitchen, South East Asian cuisine. We have Ed from Gentleman Baristas, again, a awesome coffee roaster and retailer. I've got Amit from Mighty CRM, so from a technology point of view, but he's also a restaurant operator with a family project. And I've got Jamie from Too Good To Go, who are passionate about kind of food waste and created a super awesome platform to be able to combat that. So morning everyone, thank you for joining, really appreciate you coming on. So let's kick this off then. So let's talk about, I mean, I was reading only just today that landlords are apparently expecting about £2.5 billion worth from the hospitality sector today. How's it been for you guys? Have you had supportive landlords if you are renting?
Yeah. From our side, sort of absolutely. We've had some, our landlords have been fantastic and very supportive of what we do. And I think the main thing is just sort of, they've been very supportive when they've sort of, when we've communicated with them, when we've actually spoken to them and talked to them. Sort of that's the big thing, that if those that just go quiet and keep them, that's when sort of landlords, I think, begin to worry. I think that the main thing is to keep talking to them throughout everything. And on the whole up, our landlords have been fantastic. So.
I think I would probably second that. Sorry to jump in there.
No.
So very, very similar to Ed. We're operating coffee shops, roastery. We have 2 units with that. So we found the local authority actually very helpful. They came forward, prior to us going to them. We were given 3 months rent-free period, and that's a full holiday. A TFL as well, very, very much the same. So we saw some support quite early on. And exactly as Ed says, we've spoken to our private landlords. Each of them have been understanding. We made an offer to them, not quite the same as we would have had from local government. We understand we're all in business. But I think, it's about understanding each other's issues and trying to be fair. Effectively, we just tried to share some of the pain going through this.
I think sharing the pain is kind of where we are too. We have 2 landlords. One is a huge landlord and has been incredibly supportive. They've obviously waived the last 3 months' rent and are looking like they're going to possibly do the net for the quarter now upcoming. The other landlord is a very small private landlord, and they're struggling. They're very much struggling. They've got their own commitments and responsibilities. They've been good with us so far, but I think we're looking at them. They're more of a deferment, and they're in equally as much trouble as anybody else. So, as you said, we're working with them, trying to make it share some of the burden between us all.
Yeah, I think the challenge as well of the next sort of quarter is that none of us know what it's going to look like. We're of course all, we've got our ideas hats on, sort of, and we're trying to sort of innovate and come up with sort of new ideas and new ways of serving people. But actually, in terms of revenue, we really don't know. And so I think speaking to landlords about, perhaps changing to turnover rents and sort of, and essentially just, again, being honest with them about what you're making, if by the sort of, if it all goes well and so for some reason we sort of, our revenues are fantastic, then of course we're going to sort of, we wouldn't just say to our landlords, oh no, it's terrible.
I think I agree. Box Park were really good. Essentially, they said we're shutting down the sites, so no need to pay anything until we open them again. Westfield, sort of similar. We were still semi-operating for critical clients only in the health. So we've got nurses and doctors. So only critical, maybe 1 a day clients. So we reduced capacity. Westfield, and they were really good with us as well. And then we've moved very much to a turnover type rent with Westfield going forward, which I think I saw a BBC News article about that today, that a lot of businesses will be moving. They share the risk and share in the upside.
I think just to add to what I mentioned is that this is about being fair as well. It's certainly one of my principal traits. We've had the local authority come back to us. The roastery is actually doing quite well. So they reapproached us and said, look, we're going to look at ways of trying to phase this and sort of share the pain going forward, but we're in a position to pay them. So I've said exactly that. This is all going to come back. We're going to have to pay for this somehow. So actually, if we're able to contribute or able to pay our rent, that's when the time comes. That's the time to put your hand up and say, look, we're supporting this. We're supporting others.
That's really true. And I think deferment is, it's great for cash flow, in the immediate, but actually all you're doing is just shifting the problem. You're just going to have the problem down the line.
We had mixed feedback and mixed relationships with landlords. I have to say, I have across two of my business, we have 9 landlords, and we had everything from very understanding and flexible to you have to pay now, getting a letter from the lawyer threatening to wind up and charging us for the letter of the lawyer and stuff. So I guess it very much depends on the type of landlord, because as you said, some landlords have obligations, some landlords have a funding structure with banks where covenants are breached and they're going to get in trouble. But I would say majority of the landlords have understood by now that the world is changing and the world has changed. And if they don't give some sort of concession, they will lose much more than if they're playing hardball. Obviously, if you have the one rogue landlord who's just completely inflexible and completely bullying you, there's very little you can do, because as long as I don't have more than one of those guys, I'm not considering any kind of restructuring or insolvency operations to get rid of those guys, because the sites have all been profitable. So, but I think the tide has changed, because 3 months ago when we first approached landlords, the first feedback was very mixed, whereas now I think people are slowly but surely coming together. The problem with the turnover rent I see is that it's overwhelming a lot of the smaller landlords. I mean, we have a very sophisticated back office system that can prove them exactly what turnover we've done on the day by the hour. But if you have a landlord who has like 1 or 2 properties as their family investment, it's going to be very hard to get those guys into a process where they are going to look month by month. How much turnover did you make? What's the percentage of it? How much is delivery, which is not considered, and other things. So I think it's going to be very landlord by landlord, and it's going to be a lot of work and quite difficult, but it's the only way forward.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome feedback. Look, it's having these conversations, and it's why we want to put it on a platform like this for others to see these views and the cross conversations. But the takeaways that I take from there, that's sharing the pain piece, that we're all going through this. We're not all going to hit maximum right now in our industry. So sharing the pain's a key part of that. And yes, you're absolutely right. It's individual based upon the landlords, etc. But there seems to be a general consensus that it sounds like you're being well supported, which is great. That's the only way we can thrive out of this. And Adam, you mentioned obviously you've had Roastery open during this period. I'm assuming kind of your online web activities gone up during this period, has it? Or
yeah, that's certainly the case. I have to say, as we came into the 3rd week of March, we watched pretty much all of our wholesale customers slide off. That accounted for about 80% of our business. So yeah, real time to strategize, really focus on, none of us knew what was happening. And it went, really quite deep, right the way through suppliers in all industries. So online, was the obvious thing to be focusing on. We advertise more than we have done before. But it's real time to focus on our online. We've got 3 parts to our business, one being the shops, the principal area of wholesale, and the second with the online. My auto update's actually clicking through. I might have to turn it off in a moment. So, but the online, yeah, we've seen that over triple actually in terms of our subscribers. Really, really strong growth. It's meant that we're able to put staff onto that, focus on streamlining the user experience online, which we knew we needed to tighten up. Christmas is usually our spike for the year, so we've seen 2 spikes this year. Let's hope we don't see another. But yeah, online for certain saved us, along with our wholesale clients that are retailing. So retailing on the shelves, we've seen again about 3 to 4 times the business increase on that side. So a lot more packaging rather than sending things out in kilos.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting you say that, Adam. So for ourselves here at Too Good To Go, you know, we work with sort of over 3,000 businesses across the UK, and these are like an eclectic mix of businesses, but predominantly we had a like an overwhelming sort of majority that was in the hospitality and food service sector. So when the high street closed, we saw that in terms of the meals that we could help our partners save. So we ended up shifting and working a lot on the wholesale side of things. You know, we had a huge amount of wholesalers, producers, manufacturers get in touch who were struggling with getting with their produce having a route to market. So that was an area of our business which we actually grew by 700% over sort of March and April. So it has been, you know, when you sort of look at sort of the impact of the pandemic from a sustainability point of view, you know, that food waste that we're sort of seeing happening, you know, quite frequently on a day-to-day basis in food service and hospitality was just getting shifted further up the supply chain.
Oh, super awesome insight, Jamie. Thank you for that. And what's been the general kind of practice for Too Good To Go during this time? It'd be interesting to hear it from a kind of technology vendor point of view. I'm assuming your staff have been working from home. What's been the graph?
Exactly, yeah. So we've all been working from home, but we've still been operating. So we introduced a few different things to the platform. So the platform traditionally works as a way of connecting consumers with businesses who have surplus food. Mm-hmm. But we introduced a support local initiative. So it was allowing our partners who weren't on sort of traditional click and collect models or platforms to use our platform for that. So it was a commission-free initiative just to really try and support our partners through this time by allowing them to sell their food at full price with no commission being taken. At the same time, we sort of recognize that food waste doesn't stop. And again, it was working with manufacturers, with wholesalers, and with suppliers to really try and address food waste at scale. So there's some anecdotal examples, but we're helping a cheese manufacturer in West Cornwall at the moment and redistribute 10 tons of cheese, which was about to be thrown away, but we're finding that food a lovely home in people's bellies.
You want to send some here? I'll quite happy take on some cheese. Yeah.
There we are. Next session's a cheese party, apparently. That's awesome. Richard, tell me about you guys. Obviously, shopping centres, Box Park, like you said, they're shut down. How did you guys react? What have you been doing?
So I think at the start of March, around the 2nd or the 3rd, we moved all our head office staff to work from home anyway, just seeing what's happening overseas. And then because we are in sort of the health and wellness / medical front, we've got all the medical PPE. We made sure we had all our disposable gloves, masks, social distancing. But the footfall essentially dropped by 90-95% across Westfield and Box Park. We shut down Box Park. So we moved to booster shots on the road. So essentially, we'd hire a zip car, put a couple of nurses in it, turn up at people's front doorstep. They'd come outside, a non-touch technique, give them an injection, and then move on to the next person. So that went quite well. And then we have a call-out sort of concierge service where we go to people as well. So as long as we had full COVID checks, sort of, we had the temperature scanners, we had everything that most people have got in place. Now we had that at the beginning, so quite lucky.
Amazing.
Once the NHS shortage of PPE has sort of subsided, we were then ordering PPE for ourselves. So we thought we'd put some of that online, and that went down quite well. The sort of changes we've made. But essentially, revenue along with footfall dropped 90% on the retail fronts because there's just no footfall coming through. We also noticed that I think quite a lot of our client base actually travel a lot. So they're business type people. They travel. They work in the US. They work in Europe. They work in London, and a lot of our customers are actually traveling. So even when restrictions are lifted, it would be interesting to see what impact that has on these customers. And then a lot of our customers ended up moving back with family outside of London. So a lot of people I know in London have actually moved back to their family homes, or they've got second homes elsewhere. So I think that affects.
Excuse me, sorry.
Oh, bless you. Okay, that's super interesting. That's super interesting. I think again, it comes back to this sharing the pain. That's the one takeaway I'm really taking from this so far. Alex, anything from you that you want to add to that?
Was that me? Did you say?
Yeah, sorry, Amit. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I suppose in terms of our technology business, we're quite new. So sort of really back end of last year, beginning of this year, we have a base product which is aimed at huge business, but what we concentrate on is the smaller businesses, the up to 20 sites. And what I think we found is the first 6 to 8 weeks of this lockdown, it was tumbleweed running through the air. We had nothing going on, nobody talking to us. But as people just themselves, I think, went through the first, I'm talking anecdotally, I think a lot of people went through the first 8 weeks in a bit of a daze and a bit of a desert, trying to figure out what they were doing with their lives, what was going to happen. And especially in my other industry, which is bars and restaurants, no one knew where the money was coming from. Nobody knew when this was all going to end and how they were going to deal with things like landlords, suppliers, and such going forward. But interestingly, from the last 6 weeks, sort of bringing us up to today, it's almost like the world has come back to life, and from home at least anyway. And in terms of strategy and what people are planning, things seem to have been accelerating, and our business has taken off. And it's funny enough, nobody would say they'd want to thank a pandemic in many respects, but I would say that since this has happened, it's focused people's minds, I think, a lot on what technology can bring to our industry, to the hospitality industry, and they've had time to think about how they can use different products to access their customer base in different ways. And I think that's been a bit of a boon for us. So going forward, I really do feel that this pandemic in as such has actually, what it's done in many respects is maybe not changed the way people would have reacted over time, but it's accelerated it. And maybe we've jumped forward 5 years to, faster than maybe we would have in terms of technology acceptance. So that's where we are with that. In terms of my restaurant, I'm going to be honest and say, we'll see. As somebody said earlier, who knows what our revenue is going to be like for the next month or two. But I do feel that, funny enough, I opened up my reservations book today, and I've got reservations coming in for the 4th of July. So my fingers are definitely crossed there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think as well, this is sort of a self-inflicted economic sanctions. So it's not your normal credit crunch where something out of control has popped and then you've got years of depression or recession. It's self-inflicted sanctions where now that they've been lifted, there's no reason why people won't go back to spending how they were. Obviously, you've got the unemployed who've had no money and on their benefits, but everyone else that's furloughed, etc. Will have their money to spend. And it'll be interesting to see if people haven't been going away on holiday and they're now going on holiday within the UK. That's a potential boom to the food, restaurant, hotel industry as well when the restrictions are lifted, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But what about Noosa, Hubert? What have you guys been up to, if anything, during this period?
It was a real roller coaster because when it all started, I thought like, okay, it's going to be a month or two. We're going to be closed. We're just going to mothball everything, and then we're going to go reopen. We just need to find the funds to get through that, and that was what we did for the first few weeks. But obviously, the picture changed then after a while because we realized it's not going to be just a period of closure and then hopefully a relatively gradual return to normal. It was a huge up and down as well, because with the grants we got a bit of money and a bit of hope, and then we were turned down on the CBILS loans because of some silly EU regulation that the British Business Bank is incorporating. They're not incorporating all the good stuff from the EU, but the bad stuff they seem to be really strict with. So we found ourselves first in a kind of fight to find a way out of it and find a way to survive, and then at the same time looking at alternative routes. So what we've done is we are in a trial phase this week of sending out our food, because what we realized is that the home office working mostly for customers in the city will be here to stay for a while. So whereas I always had a plan for the long-term future to establish a second business line where we maybe sell to delicatessen or to supermarkets. We had to speed that up, and we're starting with a trial this week where we're sending out our food in refrigerated drops all around the M25. So people can go to our website, order a limited range, like 50% of the range we normally have in the branches, and they can get it dropped to their house twice a week. And this is something we're trialing now, also because we're opening one of the branches next week, the only one we have that is in a bit more of a residential area, and trying with Deliveroo and trying with everything we can do from there. Opening Camden Market, where we have a stall that opened 3 weeks before the lockdown, which was the most unfortunate timing ever, but we're hoping to make that work somehow again. And then gradually see when people are going back to the offices in the city, if we have enough people there for us to make it worthwhile to open the sites. But it's obviously a huge amount of uncertainty, because at the moment the guidance from the government is to stay home if you don't absolutely have to go to the office. And as long as that guidance doesn't change, the big corporates and the banks and the law firms in the city will do the utmost possible to keep people at home, because they don't want to get exposed to the legal risk to send people to the office and then they catch something and then they're liable for it because the government said you should stay home. So I think it also makes a huge difference, because there are businesses that with delivery and with takeaway have been able to recover quite a big part of the turnover they've lost. If you're close to a park somewhere and you do takeaway drinks or food, you probably do more business than you've ever done. Whereas if you're in the city like us, then there's no point in opening. I knew some people were opening. There were numbers from Pret a Manger yesterday saying they are on the sites on average, they're down 85%, which is even worse than I feared in my worst dreams, let's say. But I think it depends very much where your sites are, and you probably have to look at it case by case as well, because at the moment we have a kind of zombie system where a lot of businesses have managed to survive, because with the furlough and with the grants that some got and with the rent that is not paid and is kind of up in the air, a lot of businesses are still alive. But as soon as that all eases out and goes away and people will start to try reopening again, I think we're going to see the real damage of the whole situation. We're going to see what's going on out there, really.
Hubert, is your reopening strategy, is it very much just following government guidelines, or is there sort of open communication with the businesses surrounding the location of your sites?
The latter. I mean, I don't really care about the government, because they have been like completely useless anyway. I mean, we're technically allowed to open because 95% of what we do is takeaway. So I could have practically kept them open almost all the time. It's just, for me, it doesn't make sense to open in Cannon Street or Threadneedles or by the Guildhall in Masons Avenue, because there's literally nobody there. A couple of builders, which is not the typical customer group that comes for lunch to us. So I'm in touch with, I used to work in the city myself, so I obviously know a lot of people and ex-colleagues and friends that work there. I'm in touch with our landlords as well to a certain extent, because they always also have office customers in the same building, to find out when they are expecting their customers to be back. But it's purely on a side-by-side basis, listening to what the corporates say, what the big banks say, and then at some stage taking a bold decision to say, okay, I think there is enough people for us to make it worthwhile with a reduced staff and reduced menu, and with hopefully more rent concessions from the landlords, to open up and not die immediately and burn up the little bit of cash we have left in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Interesting on that office point. So we're in talks past heads of terms with Canary Wharf at the minute, and obviously not an ideal location, underground shopping mall in that district. But what they've said is, from talking to their big banks, that a lot of them have set up a model in the Hong Kong offices, and they've gone back 100% with very little cases yet. And so the banks in Canary Wharf, I know, are gearing up to copy their Hong Kong model, where they'll be coming back quicker than I think people imagine, or where the news as stories essentially take. Oh, Barclays board said they're not going to go back to head office, which was a small snippet of the entire board meeting. So I know in Canary Wharf, the banks are getting ready to copy their model that they've set up in Hong Kong, regardless of what the government regulations are. It's the Barclays, the HSBC buildings are working in Hong Kong in their safe with little cases of the virus, then essentially they'll copy that model and then overlay it in London.
Yeah, it would be ideal, but I'm speaking to Canary Wharf, to the landlord as well, because we've been working on a site with them for ages, and when they started off, they were very optimistic, said everybody's going to be back in June, don't worry. And now their stance is, if by the end of the year 50% will be back in the office, that's our base case. So I think they have reduced their expectations and their planning as well a lot, just because of the sheer number. I think public transport is the main bottleneck here.
I think exactly that.
There's no way of any kind of social distancing on the tube. I don't know if you've ever been on the Jubilee line on a Monday morning at 8 o'clock, or the Central line. It's the most unsocial distancing place in the world. I'm glad that finally our Muppet government got to the point where they made it compulsory to wear face masks on the tube, and I think that should have been from day one, same as the quarantine they've done like 4 months late. So my home country has been one of the top performers in this, and restaurants have opened there almost 2 months ago. Life is completely normal there. People are going to restaurants and bars and pubs without face masks. Staff doesn't wear face masks anymore. And they're back to normal, just because in the first 1 or 2 months they got things right, and now they're back to normal. Whereas we got everything wrong in the first 2 months, and now we're paying the price for it, and it's probably going to be ongoing.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting, and maybe a good point to kind of push on. We keep hearing this phrase "new normal," right? What does the new normal look like, and stuff like that. And this whole period of what COVID's created, and having to have lockdown, which has a lot of hardship. And this point again about sharing the pain. I mean, I know as us as a business, people is super important. That's both in the businesses that we work with and staff that work with us. So, you know, we froze payments for those that are paying monthly. We extended contracts for those that are paid up front. The staff have been super awesome. They have taken pay cuts for 3 months. They've forgone some holidays and stuff like that. Moving into the new normal, and that's what this point about sharing the pain now is, because we can see what the future is going to be, even if we don't know revenue-wise what July and August will tell us a lot, I guess, for the rest of the next 2 or 3 quarters. But what does the new normal look like for you guys, particularly when you talk about the people within your businesses, and maybe the people that walk through your doors as well? Who wants to kick us off? That was a long question.
Well, I don't mind starting by just saying, like, for us, the way in which we're really communicating with our partners is just a lot of open communication. So we're running webinars to really, share as many insights that we get from, as I say, we work with over 3,000 partners in the UK alone, 40,000 globally. So the best in class practices that we can get from these, we want to share with the rest of our partners. so that they can open as successfully as possible. And the overarching message is what we're saying is to open sustainably. Like over the course of the pandemic, 36% of people wasting less food. So food waste is really in this, and this connection with food is so much deeper than it was prior to the pandemic. So it's when businesses are reopening to have sustainability and food waste at the core, because what we're going to see is this ambiguity around footfall, which ultimately will lead to more food being wasted. So having those tools, whether that's using our platform or having better forecasting systems in place, but having those measures from the get-go to really reduce that food waste, because ultimately that cuts into your bottom line.
Open sustainably. Interesting. Any comments on that?
I was actually a bit shocked, to be honest, and I think COVID has been a big setback for the whole thing, because what I did for myself is I ordered from a few places delivery, and obviously everybody was concentrating on delivery, and I ordered at places that were not online before, on delivery before. They just all jumped onto it because that was the only way how they did business, and the amount of plastic and the amount of packaging you got there was just dreadful. And I mean, I don't think the first weeks and the next months will be good for what you guys are doing, or it will be good for you what you are doing, but it will not be good for food waste. Because if you don't have no idea how many people are going to come in, and you still have to offer at least a part of your range, I think it's going to be very tricky. I mean, we are lucky because we have a very flexible model with what we cook, and we have virtually no waste. But I think it's going to be very, very hard to be sustainable in the next months, because it's always like that. When it's about survival, then sustainability and social responsibility and other things are always taking a step back, because it's just, everybody's just trying to survive. It's the same with us. I mean, when you're having a good job and you make a good living, you can buy an electric car, you can separate your rubbish and do it. But when in the morning you get up and you don't know how you buy something to eat or how you pay your mortgage, I think these things will step back a little bit unavoidably. And
I agree.
I hope we're going to get back to a more normal situation again soon, where we can then look at these super important things.
Yeah. If you look at the coffee industry from sort of, I think sort of 2-3 weeks before kind of, the initial lockdown, it was massively, obviously, it was kind of daily sort of businesses announcing, right, no more keep cups, no more keep cups, no more keep cups. And I think that kind of, it kind of created this almost kind of hysteria around that, reusable, around reusable cups. And I think that's going to carry on for the foreseeable, whether, the sort of the science behind it and the evidence behind it. I think it's inevitable that people will not be using reusable cups, certainly for coffee. And we'll see lots and lots of sort of, of takeaway cups being used.
From my point of view here, I think for us, there'll be an element of both. Yes, I fully accept what you're saying in terms of, you take the easy route when you're in survival, and we are completely in survival mode. But there is an element of because of that, having to be so careful with what we're wasting, because, every bit of wastage costs money. So for us, I think there's a nice balancing. I think, well, maybe not nice, but there will be an element of doing what we have to do to survive, but we will be forced to be careful, I think, in terms of sustainability. I think we'll be forced to, just by that fact of survival, if that follows.
Yeah,
I think I agree with that in survival, because the cost of opening up a shop is really quite considerable. I think that's the only challenge we face there with our landlords is that kind of the ones that are in offices and things like that. Obviously they're very keen for us to reopen as soon as possible, because it's a nice offer for their tenants, and it encourages the tenants to come back. But actually the kind of bringing people off furlough, then getting your supply chain back up and running. The roastery supplying coffee to the sort of sites and things like that, there is a considerable cost, and so that kind of that risk is really vast. If you've got 20 people in a building and that's down from 1,000, it's you're not going to make the revenue to survive. So it's going to be very kind of, I think, cautious, certainly from our side with those sort of office sites. But I think so that the new normal, obviously, that sustainability is a huge part of it. But I think also just from our sort of side, in terms of coffee shops, and I'm sure Adam would agree, you know, going for a cup of coffee is a very sociable thing, and we encourage all of our staff to be very kind of, you know, customer focused, and to sort of, you know, our tagline of well-mannered coffee is about engaging and talking to our audience. And it was almost kind of, I suppose, you know, when lockdown was announced, it was, you know, I think hospitality's reaction is always go, right, how can we help? What can we do? You know, and you're determined to kind of get involved and sort of, and actually, you know, being close to people is the worst thing you could do. So it was a very weird situation. So that week was very tough. And I think that's going to be the challenge as well in terms of how you kind of deliver the same kind of service, but having to be, well, at least 1 meter away from someone, or 1 meter or more. You know, that will change, I think, the way sort of people engage in sites, and sort of, you know, and that interaction, and sort of, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see what people do to try and sort of, you know, to keep it interesting and keep it personal as well.
I think for us, in fact, that kind of flows directly into what we do at Mighty, and I guess what you do, Jazz, at Magic Stamp is using technology to make those interactions as personal as possible, and not just across the board communication, which everybody sort of, I mean, I don't know how many emails you guys get every day, but so many of them are just, oh God, it's just delete. You don't even look at them. You only look at the things that actually interest you. And I think insight, I think you're completely right. Making it, one of our things here is, you know, make every day special, whether it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm not telling you anything clever, but doing that when they're, you know, 1.5 meters apart or 1 meter apart, and you're trying to be careful around these people, is going to be difficult. So talking to them is going to be so important, and how you maintain those relationships, whether insight or through technology, like we try to provide, is going to be key. I think that's going to be the key thing, making people feel like they're having a great time going out again.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I missed a short part of that, but it's from our shop's point of view. I mean, we run 4 shops, so we're not as many as some others. It's been a godsend, really, that we've kept everything so local for our shops. We are actually now looking outside of that. We are closing one of those because it just simply isn't going to be viable to reopen it. That said, actually, business has been reasonably good for us compared to those, of course, that are in central London. You know, hearing Hubert speak about that, you know, so many of our friends in the coffee industry, I know, Ed, that some of your shops have been hit really hard that are more central. Really very, very good shops that we rate, just haven't got the people there. We've been very lucky in our area that we're quite, you know, it's quite residential. A lot of people are travelling into London. We're in Waltham Forest, so around Walthamstow. And most of our shops tend to be the kind of kiosk takeaway style, so that's been quite useful. We could keep those open. That said, it was a very difficult time when the announcements were coming out. It was very, very grey. Really troubling time for myself and my partner as to, do we open on Monday? You know, we need to know. We've got to let the staff know, you know, what's happening. You know, there was no list that was produced. Yeah. It's easy with hindsight to talk about a lot of these things, the way we strategized, what worked, what didn't work. But it was very unclear as things were unfolding. It was a difficult time.
Totally agree. I think that weekend was really quite bizarre when the 20th, because I mean, we stood in the pub next to our original coffee house while sort of it was like we were watching the World Cup or something, as Boris Johnson announced, right, everything's got to close, and you kind of stood going, well, what would we do? You know, we're due to open tomorrow, sort of Sunday, you know, and then it was a very quick kind of try and get the consensus from staff. How did your staff react, Adam, to kind of obviously in terms of staying open, or sort of was there much kind of?
Sure. No, as mentioned, I mean, the furlough scheme's been useful, but that again wasn't mentioned until quite late. It's been very helpful. We took steps way earlier in March. My priority was to keep the business running, right? Because that's obviously what's supplying, and that's what's feeding our staff. Staff were the second priority. So, you know, what do we do? Not in terms of motivation. People were scared. So I was sending out video messages daily, updates. We took the strategy of following what government guidelines were to the T, because that at least meant there weren't any grey areas coming from us, and that it was widely reported. We chose actually to give our staff a pay rise. So most of those are on hourly rates, although they're full-time and employed through PAYE. But we gave them, most of them, about £1 or £1.50 pay rise, on the basis of the fact that we knew that their hours were going to reduce. So we were clear to them that we were expecting that COVID was going to impact our business in terms of sales, which meant that we were going to, you know, probably going down to 1 person per shop. That did happen, but at least we gave some confidence to our staff. Then the furlough scheme came in. Then we were able to, you know, actually they've done quite well through that period because we've looked after them. You know, those that have stayed have been paid quite well. Those that have been furloughed have been a relief for the business, means that we've been able to retain excellent staff. But we did take that choice first, and there were others that did not. And Ed, I know you're aware of that. You know, there's other businesses that actually shed their staff off, and what a terrible time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would grow stronger out the other end of this if we were taking a positive attitude. You know, we took on a lease with a new property in March when we could have dropped it. You know, we took on a new plan for a shop we are now going to be opening. I'm going to visit this afternoon. So we've got plans to grow, but we realised that if we didn't think growth, positivity, and survival, that, you know, we could easily get caught into this negative spin. We were going to come out of it the other side. What that looked like, nobody knew, but we're leaders, right? So you've got to lead your staff, and you've got to lead the people around you, and, you know, hopefully we'll have more confidence as we come out of this with people that, you know, respect us.
Exactly. I totally agree. We've got 2 sites that are mid-build that, you know, we're hoping to finish off relatively sort of soon, and then get them open. But I think we had a big discussion this morning about, actually, you know, if we just got rid of all of our staff, if they've all gone, you know, I mean, that the cost of putting together a new team alone, sort of, and actually people sort of, you know, for us, a huge part is, you know, our culture and sort of, and sort of the idea of, you know, good service, and that, you know, we've already got lots and lots of staff who are on furlough, who buy into that and who get it and understand it. And actually, you know, that's going to be so good that when those sites open up, even if, you know, some of our others don't open for some time, we've got teams that we can immediately put in who know who we are, and understand the business. And that's huge. It's hugely valuable. It's so difficult to find staff as well, you know, who it takes time to kind of get them to buy into culture and sort of, and actually understand what you're trying to do.
It should be good for both of our businesses as well. You know, I mean, Gentleman Baristas and Perky share a lot of values. You know, there's a lot of similarities there as well. Obviously, we get on very well too. Although the coffee industry is very much like that. You know, our previous times in consultancy that were not quite so enjoyable. You know, we don't refer to our other coffee shops as competitors. You know, they're friends. No. You know, we help each other out. The first thing I did actually is I contacted 2 of the local roasteries that are nearer to us than yourselves, and said, we're here, you know, if you have problems, you know, if your team goes down, we'll help. And, you know, it's reciprocated. The same goes for staff. You know, it's hard to get really good people around you, right? Which is what all successful businesses need. We expect that as we come out the other side of this, that, you know, we should be reputable businesses, and that people will want to work for us. We had that before. I hope it's stronger as we go forward, and we'll benefit from that too.
Amazing. Again, people are what make businesses. It's an old cliche, but it's absolutely true. You could have the best product and the best brand ever, particularly in bricks and mortar. If you're driving people through and they don't have that experience in store, then they're not going to come back, right? That's just the honesty of it. So that's interesting, and that was a good wide understanding of people, both in technology side and in the businesses. And on that, I guess kind of the last point I particularly want to understand from you guys is, operationally, what do you think is going to change? Where do you think you're going to adapt? Are there needs to adapt, you know, and adopt more technology or digital transformation or other things that you think will affect business over the next few months? Again, we talk new normal. Again, we say we're not too sure what the landscape looks like. From a Magic Stamp point of view, I've certainly seen in June, and particularly this last week, a huge influx of inquiries from all around the globe. And we're in about 15 countries at the moment, but it looks like we're going to be adding about 5 countries to that over the next course of weeks. So we've seen a huge influx, which is great. You know, we want to see this. I'd love to hear from you guys what you think would need to change. Why don't we kick off with Hubert, with Noosa, and where you think city-wise. Let's say things all go well. Let's say we get into mid-July, August. What does it look like? What do you think you're going to adopt or change, if anything?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a bit of a crystal ball question, but I mean, my base case scenario is that in September, there's going to be enough people back in the offices, something between 50 and 75% of the office workers. And if that happens, I think we're going to have a good shot at being back and trying to get most of the customers that really liked us and liked us more than a boring pretzel sandwich or some supermarket food. and with no rent concessions from landlords, reduced staff, a bit of a streamlined menu, we will hopefully be back and then take it from there. And everything is a possibility. I mean, there's going to be a lot of blood on the street, I think. So if we find our investors and shareholders see that this is an opportunity for us, we might as well grow, because in periods like that, you can make the best deals, and we might use that. But there is a scenario where we have like a second wave and people are not going back to the office, where you probably going to have to completely rethink the whole business, and it becomes a bit of a philosophical question. It makes sense to go on, and but we're going to have to play it step by step and month by month, I think. And for now, we are planning to gradually reopen and hopefully have the full estate open again in September. Try to make the online ordering work well and establish that as a second distribution channel, and then see where the world is in September. I guess the last 3 months have been so transformational and so critical that nobody really understands where we are now and where we're going to be in 3 months. So I think we're going to have to be very flexible and play it bit by bit.
Okay, interesting. And anybody else add any comment to that or their own views?
Yeah, well, I mean, just following on the question of how will tech help our business. I mean, we've seen technology. Okay, so on the online, we focused in those areas. People are in general as consumers much more familiar now with online ordering, using more technologies. I mean, that's obviously something that's, I think, accelerated through this period.
Yeah, agreed.
So I mean, we operate Magic Stamp in our stores, and what we envisage we'll be able to do with our Perk It Forward scheme, which is our crowdfunder at the moment. So we're basically putting a pay it forward scheme in where people can buy buy membership, and they're able to get value on their coffee, so they can buy like 25 coffees for a reduced price. Something like Magic Stamp, which is what we're expecting to use, will be an opportunity for us to be able to reward those staff in an electronic way. Very useful. You're not losing it. It's tucked away into your smartphone. So we can see that there's that in it. That particular piece of software is going to be useful for our crowdfunder, which closes at the end of July.
Amazing. Awesome.
I think, yeah, and from our point of view, I think that the way people buy coffee will change dramatically in terms of sites. We've been contacted by a number of businesses around London Bridge who are sort of preparing to come back to sort of ask about how we could deliver coffee to their offices. Now, obviously, it's the big question is, how do you deliver a cup of coffee? Either you can't do it by Deliveroo or by a kind of delivery driver. We actually, at the start of it, we kind of not naming any names, but companies that are offering that service, we kind of ordered a few to see how they were doing it, and the results weren't great. Let's say bags covered in coffee, and sort of so we gave up on the order very quickly. But in terms of getting cups of coffee to them, we've looked at systems whereby offices could we have mobile coffee machines, and sort of we could potentially turn up to them, make a load of coffee, and sort of and they book a time slot or something like that. We're looking at areas like that. I think businesses are looking at ways they can keep their staff in the offices rather than actually allowing them to leave and walk out, and that sort of actually sort of keeping them where they are will sort of be safer for everybody. So it's what kind of service we could provide, and actually to get coffee to their office rather than kind of them having to come to the shops. Whether that's practical, no idea. We've sort of looked at having someone who you have a runner from a shop basically who essentially runs to an office within a certain distance, but again it's not proven, and it's not necessarily practical, but time will tell.
Yeah, interesting. From a technology point of view, Jamie, what in the same kind of question, what do you think you guys have had to adapt or change, if anything? I know, again, from a Magic Stamp perspective, supporting the high street is super key to us, and our original idea around this was about big loyalty for small businesses. So we've created like more of an ecosystem in regards to prepaid vouchers, being able to do remote redemption on the stamps for delivery and things like that. Is there anything that you guys have had to do or are doing over this time?
I think fundamentally, like, our business model is about, helping businesses to recover sunk costs and reduce their food waste. So inherent in what it is we're doing, we're supporting businesses in that way. As I mentioned earlier, when the pandemic first hit, we introduced different things to our platform, such as this Support Local initiative. So for us, it's really just about making sure the high street, but also businesses across the food service and hospitality sector, as well as retail and wholesale, are aware of solution providers which can help them when it comes to reducing their food waste.
Awesome. Okay. I've taken up a lot of your time, guys, and I really appreciate your feedback. There's some really interesting insight there. Before I wrap this up, is there anything anybody would like to add or contribute that in this short space of time we have been able to get across? Silence. Awesome. Good. That's what I want to hear. Guys, honestly, genuinely, thank you very much. That was super insightful for me. I hope that was insightful for you individually and those of you that tune in to watch this. And let's hope that over time we get to have a cure for this horrible virus, and we can kick its butts and get back to normal. I think what's really important and underpins all of this is that we get back, the economy gets back, the UK globally, in a super safe way. And I think the whole point of having this type of conversations with budding entrepreneurs like yourself is that this is where innovation comes from, either via service or via technology. And the UK is particularly good at both. So guys, thank you very much. I will make sure this is shared on social. You guys share amongst your own channels. And please, whoever's tuning into this, get in touch with these guys if you want to go and visit or you're interested in their tech. Okay. Thanks very much, guys. Cool. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.